Saltwater History, episode 215, Monday night. Richard, what's going on?
Oh, just had a kind of busy day and happy to get back with you on the podcast and talk to our lovely audience.
We missed last week, but honestly, I think we have some of our best episodes after a bye week.
Mm,
To adjust, take a little rest, more
yeah,
articles come out, more stuff happens, and then we come back full throttle. So wanted to get this one on the beginning of the week. What happened to you
absolutely.
today? You had a famous tweet. You're famous now,
Famous, yeah. The famous. It's all relative, Charlie. It's all relative.
but pretty good day for at Hot H2O History.
Yeah, I don't have many viral tweets, but this one went a little viral. Of
Want to
course,
give the
it really
want-
piggybacked off the insights of a great economist and a man who deserves his notoriety.
doctor
Doctor, great
Peter
Peter
St.
St. Ange, Austrian economist extraordinaire, YouTuber and podcaster extraordinaire. So it's not just economics that you can learn from the great Peter St. Ange.
So he's responding to a NYC Mayor Mamdani clip. And Mayor Mamdani announces five city-run, tax-funded grocery stores with quote prices set at 30% below retail prices.
Now, mind you, of course, this is so anti-Misesian. The only means by which we can, because of subjective value theory, which is verifiably and observably true, the only means by which we can judge the value of a thing and come to a sound estimate of it as a commodity, as a service, as a good, whatever it might be, is by prices. And of course, this is smacking against the whole notion of prices, or it's establishing an a priori principle of, at least from Mamdani's perspective and any other vapid socialists, that prices mean profit and accrue to greed, or more so, are the result of greed or avarice on the part of producers, and that the consumer is always screwed in the marketplace.
Peterson on tweets. Mamdani announces city-run groceries will set prices 30% below retail. Typical grocery margins are 2%, meaning first, the city will lose ungodly amounts of money, at least 28 cents on the dollar. Second, below cost stores will steal enough market share that real groceries abandon the city. Third, taxpayers will get tired of the money hole and slash subsidies, at which point city groceries become money holes full of rotting food. So New Yorkers will have to take two trains and a bus to find a real grocery store. Socialism will work this time. To which you responded, you can respond.
Well, get ready for that rotten food, dirt on the floor, and outright theft by workers and the public alike. I know of this firsthand. While at University of Chicago in the early 2000s, Hyde Park had grocery co-ops. One could elect to shop there for marginally lower prices than the local Jewel, but with the lower prices came the aforementioned rotten food, parenthetically, often due to poor or non-existent refrigeration and inconsistent restocking, filthy floors, and as a kicker, completely indifferent to hostile market workers. Nothing like being called a honky bitch while exiting the store and hoping beyond hope that your brick of white cheddar that looked okay would not be rotten inside, and that your bike you locked up outside was not nevertheless stolen. Whew. The bike remained. The cheese was indeed rotten.
Did pretty good. Yes, but was it
39,
yes, but was it
39,000 and
true
counting.
socialism?
Yeah. The great the great Pete responded, yes, but was it true socialism? Yeah, echoing the words of all those socialists say, oh, it just hasn't been applied correctly. If only we had Trotsky instead of Stalin, right? And to which I retorted or responded, ha, never been tried, right? I guess if it was, my bike would have had a flat tire that I could not have repaired for months, given supply shocks and stuff like that. Although that is about the time I would get back to, or get it back from the guy who, in quote, borrowed it.
I want you to go into more detail about this.
My experience?
Yes.
Yeah, it's fairly straightforward. When I was a graduate student living in Hyde Park, going to the University of Chicago, one has to eat. Couldn't eat out at restaurants all the time. I did have a job on the side, which was good, but at the same time, you just have to be economical in where and how you're eating. So I did have to venture off to some grocery stores. There were the local co-ops, which were designed, you had to sign up for a membership. If your membership was of a certain level, you had to pay a very minimal fee to be a member. And if it was at a certain level, you would get discounts because the idea was not unlike the Sam's Club model that you would be shopping there exclusively. But just so happened that unlike the Sam's Club or the Costco model, these were cooperatives. That is to say, the workers and those who labored there, as well as community, I suppose, organizations, not unlike those operative in Fair Oak Park, also had an ownership stake there. I'm not sure as to what the city's ownership stake was, but the idea was that the profits would be shared by people working and living within the neighborhood, and thus it wasn't so much a capitalistic venture by any stretch of the imagination, nor was it employee owned. It was a cooperative, so it was somewhat or quasi socialist and certainly not capitalistic. And so I would venture in there just to, especially if I thought, well, I could get something somewhat cheap. I don't want to spend a lot of money. And how can you screw up cheese, really, or crackers or something like that? If you're having people, I don't think they. It was very, um, what would be the word, teetotaler too, and Calvinistic in a way, because I don't think you could buy alcohol there. So there were no means by which you could spend, if you wanted to get beer for or wine for a party or something like that, you wouldn't go to the co-op. And it just so happened that you're treated pretty rudely there. It was always filthy. The food was rotten. And I remember vividly when I was about to graduate, there was a whole segment on local TV. I believe it was on Channel 7 News on ABC. And it was talking about there was a community meeting about the co-op stores and what to do with them because they were all going out of business. And there was all this hand wringing and consternation about the co-op grocery stores going out of business. And I remember this one elderly woman who happened to have all the sagacity of anyone in the various academic halls in University of Chicago who had lived there for 40 or 50 years in Hyde Park. She got up in the middle of the community meeting, and this was on television. She said, "Why don't we just let them all fail? They all suck anyway. Who gets their food there? It's terrible. Just let them fail. Let them fail. It's horrible." So Agnes or whatever her name was, God bless her. I hope she's in heavenly glory with our Lord in the beatific vision. Given her sensibilities and the grace she cooperated with, it seems like she might be.
Do you know of any of these effects that happened though?
Oh, yes, right. So, well, I mean, the one advantage of having, I suppose, there wasn't a whole bunch of competition. So remember that in terms of neighborhoods that are a bit on the wealthier side, the upper middle to upper class never went to the co-ops, or if they did, they were kind of slumming it and they just wanted to be among the people, but they didn't do their shopping there. So, given that Jewel was the only alternative, and people would still have to drive up to Bridgeport um, or stuff like that, people would just go and take their cars and drive to Bridgeport, and the local populace was stuck with the co-ops, or they would might get on a train and go to South Loop or something like that to get food and then bring it back. So there was limited competition, so that was beneficial to the Jewel. Now you might say, well, why didn't a Whole Foods move into Hyde Park as there exists one now? By the way, there is a Whole Foods on 51st Street or 55th, I can't remember. And sure enough, all the co-ops are gone. So what that's indicative of is that once you allow for the co-ops to die and their irrational and non-organic and artificial subsidies to go away and their active anti-market activities, well, sure enough, once those are eliminated, you have a real grocer go in and they satisfy the needs of that particular population or marketplace.
And how long do you think these will last?
Well, it depends on how much money is going to be thrown and wasted or what the willingness is of the New York taxpayer slash budget committee chairpersons, whoever they are, to allot funds to keep this going. You can, as Mises said repeatedly, as Rothbard said repeatedly, you could keep throwing money at something as a problem and just have that value that is behind that medium of exchange just evaporate, just as you would have continually breaking windows in a factory, and then, sure enough, the supposed redounding value of the fallacy of the glass breaking never comes to fruition. But you could continue to fool people as long as you throw money at it and are willing to waste at exponential rates or terribly foolish rates, so as to, again, create allies, no matter how, and it's not, you're essentially paying off a class of workers or ideologues who wish to go along with this and war against reality. So it really depends upon the willingness of the New York population and attendant, I suppose, stakeholders. I hate that word, but people who are interested and to some degree either forcibly or in a voluntary fashion made to be participants in the scam. What's their patience as their actual value evaporates away, and it ends up not being very beneficial to the people to whom it was designed to serve, or of whom it was designed to serve.
Socialism sucks. Link
Sure
that book.
does. Ben Powell, we met him.
That was real a lot of fun.
Hmm. It's a great book. You read that, right?
No,
You
just
didn't read Socialism Sucks? Oh, you really, it's a great winding trek. And Ben Powell and Robert Lawson, they are buddies and they go to all these different places within the world. They got into Eastern China and were on the border with North Korea. They tried to get in North Korea, but they couldn't get in. But they did get into Cuba. They got into Venezuela. They got into other areas and just tried the beers and then remarked upon, well, why does Cuba only have one state-run beer that everyone refers to as beer as horse piss or something like that? And the like. And why does Georgia, as say the country of Georgia, have this immense groundswell of prosperity and wealth being generated, and they have the best cuisine and the varieties of beer, local and foreign, available? There's a reason.
the classic responses here. I don't
Yes.
need the other responses to this.
Mm. Yeah. When you do have a tweet that goes a little bit viral and then an attendant kind of reply that, even for me, by my standards, with 1,600 views or plus, is pretty big. You really see in the responses, you wonder how many potent drugs people are taking and then going on Twitter, because some of these thoughts aren't even coherent, and they're certainly not in any way grammatically or stylistically well written. I'm not trying to be sound like a pompous asshole, but I don't even know how to respond. Like the one, you can't repair your own tires, laugh out loud. What what does that mean? Of course you could repair your own tires. You just need the materials by which to do that, which was the whole point. If you live in a socialistic system, you have to wait on the materials to repair your tire. So anyway,
That went over their head.
yeah, it went a little bit past them.
So I think we should talk about another failed government operation.
Sure. And you expressed you had a great question. Well, how long can this persist? Well, how long has the U.S. Postal Service persisted, despite the really almost unfathomable waste, fraud, abuse, and poor service with that? How long has the DMV continued to exist? I mean, you have these entities that have successfully sold or have a narrative to sell to the general population, that narrative supported and then disseminated by institutions, again, attached to the government, and public institutions like public schools, and reinforced down in media and whatever. And so you have the post office. Well, it's constitutional. It says Congress Congress may establish a postal service. Yes, may. It's not compulsory. And I would go so far as to venture, I'm not going out on a limb here, that Hamilton, even though he wasn't the greatest of, he wasn't into austerity by any stretch of the imagination, but Hamilton would blush at the suggestion that because a potential power is bestowed upon Congress to establish an institution like the post office, when it's running billions and billions of dollars in deficit every year, that Congress need not pursue such a black hole.
Do you have you ever heard the Owen Benjamin bit about the post office?
I don't think so.
It's the one it's the one government operation he defends
Okay.
because when he got shut down from all of the platforms and essentially
Oh, right.
debanked,
I have heard this. Yeah.
he could only get money and support through the post office.
Well,
So
that's
he would be going on Twitter getting in fights with people about how the post office is good because it was the only way that he was making money.
uh, it's a government entity subsidized by the government and thus has a non-market function while operating in the market. It pushes out free competition that would otherwise lower prices.
I just want to check on Rothmas, the follower count now. Wow, 674,000.
That's pretty, that's huge.
We were friends with him when he was at 6,000.
Yeah. Although I think he's, if I was going to critique him a little bit more, he's got to go harder on Trump and the right. So I think he kind of pussyfoots on that angle.
Let's talk about this one. The post office is out of cash and stealing from its own workers' retirement funds just to stay open.
That's the labor paradise that we all dream of, right, socialists?
Postmaster General David Steiner told Congress last month the business model is broken. No profit since 2006 and over $117 billion in losses since 2007, including $9.5 billion last year alone.
I mean, 117 billion, we could have funded another war. I mean, that's what we gave the Ukrainians so far, isn't it? Around there?
First class mail volume just dropped another 6.3% in a single year as people switch to email and digital bills. And the only segment still growing is packages, where UPS and FedEx already dominate. They delayed the
Mhm.
collapse by skipping payments into the workers' retirement plan. That buys time, nothing more. Just privatize it completely and be done with it. Private carriers already deliver the growing part of the business more efficiently without rating pensions or running perpetual losses. Competition forces real cost control and service improvements. A government monopoly that has lost money for nearly 2 decades will never fix itself.
Mhm. All true. I don't know how much more to add other than that it's a boondoggle. It's been a boondoggle for decades. They just increased again for sky stamps. Allowing, they're running essentially a Ponzi scheme vis-a-vis their workers. So what are we really doing here? Just privatize the whole thing. And then you might say, oh, but what about the US Post? I like my mailman. It's the same dynamic as you're going to kill my grandmother with the COVID vaccine or without getting vaccinated. Everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, there's a good portion of people that like their mailman, just like they like their doctors. But guess what? At a certain point, you certainly want the best for both the mailman or the doctor or the service provider and for you in any type of exchange. So why settle and allow for the status quo to persist when you could mutually benefit from the large privatization of this inordinately wasteful entity? I mean, UPS, I mean, imagine both the outrage and the response of, for example, stockholders. If UPS started rating its 401k fund just to pay for
Yes.
daily operations, the immense double standard there vis-a-vis private versus public market or operations is hard to ignore.
Can you tell the Lysander Spooner story?
Oh, well, Spooner was so frustrated with the postal service in his day. We're talking about the mid 19th century, that he formed his own postal service And it was so successful that he was essentially brought to, if I remember correctly, he was arrested and brought to court for operating an independent postal service. And, but it was all more of an experiment that turned somewhat profitable and successful to show how government monopoly, or when government strives for both monopoly and monopsony, that it ends up being deleterious to everybody. Good old Lysander.
And they essentially made him. I mean, it basically got
Hmm.
shut down.
Hmm. And I don't know to what extent the horses or the workers or the materials, stamps or whatever he used were seized and then expropriated and utilized by the U.S. Postal Service. I'd have to look into the case more thoroughly, but it was a great proof for Spooner and only served to fuel his terribly principled and brilliant anarchism later on.
And then let's talk about the current state of. Actually, I want to pull this up.
Oh, there we go. Ah, so the great clothier, let's call them a clothier, sound fancy, Forbidden Clothes, which produces very well designed, anti-authoritarian, and certainly, well, let's just call it noticing type of t-shirts, have put out some great ads, and they had this little X clip about Mel Gibson, showing Mel Gibson fueling up at the local pump, and he's dressed to the nines, and as he's pumping up, he just says, "Well, what the fuck?" And sure enough, as the dial spend goes up to 100 something dollars, it reads "fuck you, stupid boy," and he says "son of a bitch," and then there is a rabbi dancing around giving him the finger. There you go. So, and the little caption reads, "How it feels filling up your tank while America fights yet another war for Israel." So, and one, I love that comment. Jackson Bartholomew below
Yeah.
says, "I like how the music from the 1990 film Braveheart is playing in the background." That's great. Yeah. So, I'll play the. Why don't we go ahead and play the whole clip here, just for people to. It's only 17 seconds or so, 18 seconds. So let's go ahead and do that. Here you go. Enjoy.
What the fuck? Son of a bitch! What the fuck?
They got a good laugh out of you, huh, Charlie, when I sent it to you?
I wasn't even familiar with Forbidden Clothes. Is that where you got that one
Yeah, that's
shirt?
where I get the t-shirts.
That's where it is.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. I didn't actually know
the
that they were
first
this
noticer.
big. I didn't know that they were this big.
Oh, they're huge. Yeah. They're doing gangbusters. And they do cartoons with Netanyahu and Trump, and yeah, it's there he is.
AI Toy Story.
Hmm. They're really dynamic what they're doing. So yeah, get their shirts.
That's awesome.
My next shirt will be there's one that I loved I should have gotten, but I only had a budget for two at the time. It's a bundle of sticks wrapped and tied up, and it says "Don't be a." So there you go. I like that one too.
Saint Ephrem.
Definitely not a bundle of sticks, and definitely not Jewish.
This quote reads, "Not of compulsion is the doctrine. Of free will is the word of life. Whoever is willing to hear the doctrine, let him cleanse the field of his will that the good seed fall not among the thorn of vain inquirings. If you would heed the word of life, cut yourself off from evil things. The hearing of the word profits nothing to the man that is busied with sins. If you will to be good, love not dissolute customs. First of all, trust in God, and then hearken to his law."
Yes. I love that quote so much, and I've always been a devotee of St. Ephrem. His feast day is on my birthday. But beyond that, I remember as a seminarian reading his hymns on the Nativity, which are just absolutely beautiful, even in translation from the original Syriac. And Ephraim here, we share this quote, and I wanted to share this quote on this episode because there's such an emphasis here about the deployment, utilization, and correct formation of one's will. And that could only occur for the rational animal of the human being if indeed his will is free. And by the grace of God, informed both when we engage in virtue and when we're corrected by grace in vice. It's a recognition that in our virtue, we are what's brought about is true lasting beatitude, true lasting happiness. And vice, the opposite. In sin, we ruin that or we become disoriented, as St. Paul notes in his epistles, like an archer who's missing his mark, where our aim is all skewed to our end. And thus, it's always been a point of mine as we are such advocates and defenders of free market, entrepreneurialism, capitalism, in that not only is there charity in the producer producing for the consumer and the consumer then in exchange, usually a medium of exchange like money to the producer, that is a truly loving act insofar as there's no greed or I wouldn't even say greed. There's no um, malice involved in those exchanges. To be sure, there's no trickery because even and we have morals and ethical guides like the Decalogue to root us back into how that is to operate in toward both parties in universal happiness. But unless you allow for the free will of the moral agent to act, we're not dealing with someone who can be, for example, blamed or is accountable for his or her sin and or rewarded for his virtue or supererogatory actions, just above and beyond type of heroic acts of the theological virtues of faith, hope, and love, or the cardinal virtues of prudence, temperance, justice, and the like. So, my point being here is that there's within whether we're talking about socialism or just even something like fascist totalitarianism, any type of command and control government system, including and especially progressivism, which masks itself with this. What's really dangerous about modernist progressivism is that personal sins are kind of unleashed, and yet there's always this kind of command and control and uh, human authority that's established that says you better not do this, you better not do that, and castigates anyone who operates outside of the perceived upper or accepted classes. One would call it the cathedral, a la Curtis Yarvin or something like that. And then therefore they could say, well, we need a law to guide and direct these people. Otherwise, they're going to go into their own destitution. So that it's always been very impositional, whether we're talking about socialistic economics, command and control government, centralized government. It's very, very Calvinistic and judgmental. They just don't like the tastes of everybody else.
I was talking a little bit before we hit record about how we do a great job of exposing the double standard of free will that exists in our
Mm-hmm.
society,
Right.
particularly among the ruling class and the rest of us, about how there's just a certain level that you mentioned with UPS, that if UPS starts, and that's at the company versus government level, but it's even more with the individual level as well. If UPS starts taking money out of 401ks to keep their business alive, that's
Mhm.
national news, right? I hadn't heard about this post office thing until you sent it to me. And there's just going to be it is what it is attitude about this because it turns out they've been having, I didn't know the numbers on this either about what was it? No profit since 2006 and over $117 billion in losses since 2007.
Mhm.
Private businesses, entrepreneurs, they can't operate like that.
Right. Yeah, there's no profit loss system. There's no effect, negative consequence for the limitless thievery and inefficiency of a publicly subsidized, somewhat prescribed constitutional measure, right? It's a black pit, and it weighs on the finances. Amazing. Again, imagine if that 117 billion was simply redirected toward tax relief for whatever individuals. I would, of course, want all of the government to be just simply abolished. That's me. But the utilization of that $117 billion over 9 years or 10 years, it could go to a variety of different functions, or hopefully no functions, just to into the or back into the um, maybe just less inflationary pressure, for example.
I love this part. The hearing of the word profits nothing to the man that is busied with sins.
Hmm. Yeah, we become deaf. And that speaks to the enslavement of the will that comes with sin, right? You either act the angel or you act the beast in those sins, um, depending on their nature, depending on the circumstances in which they're committed. And as a result, your human will is blinded toward what is good, true, and beautiful. More so, it just seems to me that the more you go into command and control economics, domineering economics, people are unable to, through anything from trial and error or simply the diversity of their tastes and preferences, determine what is good for them. You're enslaving people who you deem as inferior to a paucity of choices that are only acceptable to you. And thus you're condemning them to a constant or perpetual adolescence, economic, social, political, just life adolescence. Ironically, it's it's quite interesting. I mean, if you look at, and we make this point in A Twisted History of the United States, many of the, and you don't have to be Freud or Jung to get into the psychology of this, but if you read through the complaints of the colonists and leading intellectuals and leaders of the colonial, I won't say insurrection movement in the beginning, but simply in their exchanges with Parliament, with King George and authorities back in Britain, the refrain is that you're keeping us in a perpetual state of adolescence when we've grown up. We are self-reliant. And thus that's the dynamic that they often find. We have letters from Washington complaining that he can't get the most fashionable clothes that are being worn in Britain at the time. And that all of these mercantilist mechanizations are keeping them again. It's like you're the daddy, we're the children. And that was not how the ancient charter rights dating back from the foundation of America were established. We were to, with your support, grow into maturity, but once attaining maturity, have a level of self-sufficiency if we so desired it, and a legal self-sufficiency at that, but especially economic self-sufficiency. That's what they were really after, as we know.
Do you want to talk about a town that won't be celebrating St. Ephraim's feast day?
How many people in Deer Oak Park even know who St. Ephrem is or have ever heard his name? I would say it's in the great minority. Although they should be supportive, it's a minority.
Here it is.
That's it.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
You should go to your gay suburb now.
The People segment. Meanwhile in Oak Park. Brought to you by Tridentine Brewing.
Sacred Flame.
Sacred Flame.
There it is.
So this is the big news surrounding Oak Park right now. I find it pretty boring. Referendum on single-family zoning turned down by Oak Park trustees. Discussion gets heated as attendees express confusion and concern over the proposed changes.
All right. We're getting into zoning.
Let's talk zoning.
The greatest crimes of government against the population.
Do you want to explain that?
Well, simply put, that it's, again, command and control, determination of given the tastes and predilections of the ruling class, where certain activities can take place within a society. Whereas that should be and has always worked in the best way in an organic and voluntary sense. That's all. And in so doing, it doesn't respond to demand. It's irresponsive of demand and the true desire of people, ranging from where and how they can do business and engage in cooperation to down to where they can even reside, where they can even set up and maintain a permanent residence. Criminal.
Some good signs here. Zoning changes deserve a vote. Let OP vote. And then MOTA, make Oak Park democratic again.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Tensions rose in Oak Park's Village Hall council chambers as questions and comments were called out by attendees in the audience, mainly towards trustee Corey Wesley at the July 21st meeting. Ultimately, the village board voted 5-1 against an advisory referendum on proposed changes to single-family zoning. Trustee James Taglia, seconded by Wesley, motioned to discuss the option of an advisory referendum on recommendations from Opticos, a consulting company.
Man, consulting companies, they when they see Oak Park coming, they must just hit the cash register. Right? I mean, how many consulting companies are operative in Oak Park at any given time?
I
10,
want to know
15?
the percentage that are mentioned in the Wednesday Journal too, because we've
Yes.
covered our fair
Fair share. Yeah. This is yet another one. Opticos.
Opticos, a consulting company on how to help increase, quote, missing middle housing and possibly eliminate single family zones.
Yes. Okay. Opticos might be on the right track here. It means you have to build more. You have to build more. It's missing because of zoning regulations that don't allow construction companies to build more housing units. This is not rocket science.
Village President Vicky Skaman was absent from the meeting due to a family obligation.
Yeah. Another horse needed watering.
Over 20 community members spoke during public comment on this subject, largely in favor of a referendum and overall expressing concern about what impact this change could bring. Quote, without broad civic buy-in, even well-intentioned policy risks, lacking the democratic legitimacy required for long-term success by the public, said Oak Park resident Noah Sullivan at the meeting. To ensure that any progress made on housing diversity is sustainable and permanently woven into our community, it is your duty to anchor this process in broad public trust.
Broad public trust. There's no such thing. Broad public trust.
Taglia was the one vote in favor of a referendum, arguing that the zoning changes are monumental enough to warrant public input. Quote, let's be the board that trusts and listens to the people of Oak Park, said Taglia. Let's be the board that recognizes the difference between ordinary policy decisions and foundational ones. Wesley said he seconded this motion because he believes in democracy and allowing the community to be heard, but he does not believe in holding a referendum.
That's great.
He said
let's have them heard, but we're not going to hold a referendum.
He said previous village boards have always voted on zoning issues with such measures, and when advisory referendums have been held, they have not always been followed. Quote, the law in Illinois is clear. The village board votes for zoning. That's just how it works, said Wesley.
Oh, okay. So yes, because Oak Park just is teeming with all of this desire to maintain the traditions that have gone in the past. Yeah, that have been operative in the past. It's just the way it works, so that we don't want to tear down the fence once it's standing.
Trustees Brian Straw, Derek Eater, and Jenna Leving Jacobson shared similar opinions that the topic is too nuanced to effectively ask a yes or no question on a ballot. Quote,
should we do zoning or should we not do zoning? Oh, too much, too nuanced.
Quote, I don't think that an advisory referendum provides the same level of meaningful engagement as a real open hearing town hall forum strategy does provide for, and that's why I am not in support of this advisory referendum, said Straw.
Okay.
Eater and Leving Jacobson also acknowledged community concerns about how to ensure affordable housing is created with the zoning changes and does not pave the way for more housing inequities.
It's always an excuse.
Quote, limiting the single family zoning alone will not guarantee meaningful improvements in affordable housing stock. And that is why I also am committed to doing this within any zoning changes alongside an inclusionary housing ordinance, said Leving Jacobson.
I drove through, I have to tell you, I'm glad we did this story because I drove through Oak Park this weekend. I had to, I was forced to. Again, as many times we said, it's a beautiful place.
It's so
It's
nice.
stunning. The architecture
It
is
makes me so mad.
it's gorgeous.
I
It's
I
gorgeous.
I can't stand how nice Oak Park is.
It really is. You see. And yes, we can joke around about Hemingway, its most
Percy
famous native
Julian.
son. Well, Percy Julian, yeah. I don't know if Percy Julian was this observant, but Hemingway said broad lawns, narrow minds. Okay. But here's the thing. Evocative of Hemingway, it hit me that, and I didn't know the story we were going to talk about this, but as I was driving through, I'm thinking, why don't they build more housing and affordable housing in different areas? And the answer is because all the established, incredibly old generational money there, they don't want to lose equity in their houses. If you increase the supply, and if you dare say, and they could do all this language, and it's just a big cover about inclusivity and all that, they don't want single family homes, and they don't, or more single family homes, because that increases the supply and diminishes their value. And worse, if they God forbid, they build more apartment complexes and allow for affordable housing in the village, that could ruin their equity in their house too, and the value of their house because make Oak Park less attractive. That's what's going on here. That's why you have all of the parking regulations. That's why I have all of the Calvinism, but none of the actual morality behind it. It's it's all greed. And if you don't see that as an Oak Parker, it's just because you live there too long.
What is single family zoning and what are the changes being proposed? Opticos partnered with the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus and 18 Chicago area municipalities to study how zoning reform can help shape, quote, attainable housing solutions. The toolkit created from their findings was released in 2025. Oak Park partnered with Opticos to create a recommendation on how to update the zoning code to address affordability issues. The recommendation includes changes to language such as, quote, family to, quote, unit, and neighborhood district designations. These new designations would allow for middle housing options, such as apartments, to
There
be
you go.
built in neighborhoods that are currently only zoned for standalone buildings that are meant for one household.
There you go. See?
Those zoning designations can be traced back to a zoning ordinance adopted by Oak Park in 1921. The code
Hmm.
outlined specific areas in the village where only multifamily or single family buildings were allowed. Some community members in Wesley spotlighted the long-standing conversation of how historical use of single-family zoning enables racial and socioeconomic exclusion, prompting a bigger discussion on the origins of current Oak Park codes and reasons to change them beyond affordability. Quote, what you're arguing for is a system that keeps people like me from living next to people like you, said Wesley during the meeting. The reason the zoning change is important is because housing types dictate race.
Yeah, but I thought, didn't Wesley vote against changing it? I'm
Wesley
confused.
voted against giving it was 5-1
And only
against an
Taglia.
advisory referendum on proposed changes to single family zoning.
Okay, but I thought only Taglia voted to change it. Or am I mistaken? Everybody else said keep it the way it is. Am I wrong?
I think so.
Okay,
The village board voted 5-1 against an advisory referendum on proposed changes. So the village board doesn't want this referendum
right.
on.
So Trustee James Taglia, seconded by Wesley, motion to discuss the option, right?
Right.
If you could page down, let's see. Keep going, keep going. Taglia was the one in favor, the only one who voted in favor of the referendum, arguing that the zoning changes are monumental enough to warrant public input.
Right.
Well, then Wesley voted against it. He doesn't want the referendum.
Wesley wants the zone. It sounds like Wesley wants the voting changes, but not the referendum against on the proposed changes. So they're changing
Okay.
it. But some Taglia is saying we need to have a referendum on these proposed changes instead of just changing it.
Oh, okay. Well,
I think.
okay. I'm confused. Why not just allow for the referendum and then do whatever they want?
Do whatever who wants.
The board. if the referendum comes back and it says, let's say it's 52-48 against zoning changes, right? Well, the board is already asserting that it has the right, regardless of the referendum, to enact zoning changes. So just go ahead and do it, or vice versa.
Oh, I get what you're saying. I don't think they even want to open that door.
So they want complete control over it, but Wesley's saying that we want to be the initiators.
Right.
Oh, okay. So he wants credit for not doing anything eventually.
He wants credit for the zoning changes, but for not, he doesn't want to allow the people that, like you mentioned, that want to stay there and want to have their equity in their home. He doesn't want them to have any
To
input.
have too much of a voice.
Exactly.
Okay.
Henry Fulkerson, former president of the Housing Forward, spoke during public comment and pushed back against those who shared concerns over their neighborhoods changing. Quote, "It is supremely arrogant for MIMBYs." What does that stand for?
I don't know. Just
To state that perhaps they will allow some affordable housing as long as it does not change the character of their neighborhood, said Fulkerson. This racist dog whistle, "Don't change the character of our neighborhood," is a public insult to our black neighbors and people of color. Other community members said they are asking necessary questions and do not feel it is fair to be labeled as racist. Quote, "I'm not saying any of you are racist. I'm not saying any of you created the system. I'm not saying that any of you are to blame for not having destroyed it already. I'm not even saying that you're to blame for not having known about it, but you know about it now. So what do you do next?" said Wesley.
oh boy,
Wow.
what the hell does that mean?
What comes next? During the unprecedented dialogue, they had a dialogue.
Unprecedented.
They had an
Never
unprecedented.
happened before.
They had an unprecedented dialogue. Back and forth between the board and the attendees, many expressed confusion on what these votes actually mean and what the next steps will be. The village board will vote on July 28th to accept but not approve the Optico's recommendation. If the
Okay.
board votes in favor, the recommendation will be given to the village's plan commission. Although the referendum was denied, there will still be many opportunities for the community to share their opinions on this topic. Village manager Kevin Jackson said there will be at least 4 meetings around the village and online for public engagement before the Plan Commission will begin hosting its own public hearings. Only after those steps are completed will the Plan Commission then vote on it recommendation back to the village board for the trustees to then vote on whether it goes into action.
There's that syntax from the Wednesday Journal we all know and love.
An official decision on this recommendation is not expected until October.
Yeah. Good luck.
And then the opinion part is the guy who was there.
Oh,
Letters to the editor. Transparency is key to buy-in, by Noah Sullivan. Dear President and the Board of Trustees,
wherever you are, Vicky Stamen, wherever you are.
first off, I want to thank all the members of the current Oak Park Village Board for your work, often unappreciated, on behalf of the residents.
I don't appreciate it.
Public service in Oak Park is not for the thin-skinned. I salute your diligence and patience. In reading the many letters, social media posts, postcards, and flyers regarding the proposed multifamily zoning expansion, I sense that your current work on this critical housing equity issue is not fully understood and, quite frankly, not trusted. I also sense a groundswell of opposition relative to a perceived lack of, quote, transparency, whether that perception is true or not. I recently received a direct mail postcard asking me to voice opposition to changing current residential zoning. Direct mail to thousands of addresses is expensive. It seems that people are getting organized and are committing significant money to the cause. This indicates that without broader civic buy-in, even well-intentioned policy risks lack the democratic legitimacy required for long-term success by the public. As a home rule municipality, the Oak Park Board of Trustees has no legal obligation to put any measure to a binding referendum. However, when monumental shifts in our housing fabric are fast-tracked with compressed public dialogue, confusion and anxiety fill the vacuum. To ensure that any progress made on housing diversity is sustainable and permanently woven into our community, it is your duty to anchor this process in broad public trust. If the board votes to implement these sweeping zoning changes without deep, collaborative resident input, the predictable democratic remedy for opponents will be to organize and replace the current board with new trustees tasked with repealing the measure. A policy built on a fragile civic foundation can be easily undone. A truly open and transparent process is the only way to forge a lasting consensus that serves all Oak Parkers. Quote, transparency is a word that gets used a lot to reduce anxieties around difficult processes. It is time to put that word into practice.
Hmm. Thanks, Noah.
Thanks all. There it is.
That's the segment.
That's the segment.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
What would have happened if I'd gone for it and just said, no, I'm gay?
Can't wait to get to the fall where things will start picking up in Oak Park.
And by the way, most of the articles in the Wednesday Journal over the last week, both opinion and semi-opinion, are about this issue. So it is a big deal. We will be talking about it more.
Yeah.
Big deal in Oak Park.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
That's it. A lot of talk about command and control versus freedom. And I'm glad that we come down on the right side of that.
Amen.
Always will. Always will.
Buy some Tridentine beer.
Absolutely.
St. Ephrem.
Pray for us. Take care, everybody.
Peace.
Peace.